Let us take a look at operations of a business. When you start up, obviously the operations are a bit different. When you're 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the line, there are a lot of different challenges that you know, business owners don't necessarily think of. And I think it would be beneficial for us to discuss that. So at least they could get some insight on it.
Sure. I was going to invite you to start, but one of the classic cases. So two guys, same mechanic shop, body workman and the mechanic guy. They get together. They have a successful business going on. The business needs a capital injection. Somebody takes out their cash and say, "Okay, I will lend you I'll put $4 million to address that debt." No, is that $4 million a loan to the company? And if it is a loan, how is it intended to be repaid? Is it going to be amortized over 2 years? Or because I put in the $4 million now, when I need the $4 million, I can pull it out? And how does it get classified? So one partner puts in the $4 million. Is it the intention that as I put in this $4 million, I am going to get shares in return? So it's not a loan. I have put $4 million additionally into the business, and now I have shares for it. And it's this kind of difficulty which is not addressed quite often because, of course, the company needs the money immediately. You get it done, but it's not classified. And if you had a shareholders agreement that said, look, where there may be shortfalls or the company needs money, any money put in by a shareholder or a partner, or not a partner, let me stick to shareholder, is to be classified as a loan. Because when the accountant comes to treat with it at the end of the year, he's got to put in the audited report. How does he classify that $4 million that has been put in? And this is just on this aspect of it. But I'm sure you have had several experiences that indicate some of the difficulties that one faces. And I'd be very interested to hear.
Yeah, so one of the things that I've noticed that, when people come to you to incorporate a company, they have absolutely no idea of some of the tools that are available to them. For a business registration person or a partnership, the only thing that is open to them is debt financing. Most people don't understand the power of equity financing and the importance of issuing shares as soon as possible, right? Knowing how much share capital and keeping a regular valuation of the company. Because, you could have somebody interested and you are not in a position to say, well, my company is worth this, right? This is what one share of my company is worth. If you would like to invest, this is what I'm going to be. And to have a clear basis for that. And of course, you have to have an accountant who is part of or advises you regularly to do the calculation of the net worth of the company, right? Look at the assets and liabilities and determine the value so that you, if an opportunity presents itself, will be able to say, well, if you'd like to invest, this is what one share is worth. My share capital is 100,000 shares. I have this amount, but I'd be willing to let you come in for X shares at an X price. And you can negotiate from there. That's a conversation I doubt that you hear very often in Guyana.
Yeah, and even the valuation of the methodology used to value the shares quite often can be, well, they're different methodologies. People don't even appreciate that. And goodwill. How do you assess goodwill? So Brenden Glasford, the name has significant pull in the market. How do you assess that? So when I come to invest and you say, well, my share's worth, whatever, $50,000 US, of which, whatever, 15% is goodwill. I see, well, how you got there. So there's so many aspects of it that we only see this when it ends up in litigation. And unfortunately, at that stage, it's a postmortem because the relationships, they get so badly damaged. The asset that you're fighting over, because you're fighting over it, starts to, the value of it starts to reduce. And you then start devoting a lot of resources towards legal representation in court. But I want to ask you this. Do you think that the culture in Guyana, and sorry for taking your role here, do you think there needs to be more public education, even amongst the business community, about these matters that we're speaking about? Because do you think that they have a full grasp of that? And I'm not talking about your big public companies where clearly, they have professionals advising them?
No, there does, from what I've seen, right, in my practice and my advisory work, people come with barely any knowledge. I don't know if I have always thought that this is something that should be covered in school somewhere, right? Obviously, perhaps as a late secondary or tertiary level, at least some idea of the concepts of business structures, equity and debt financing, even to know how to file your taxes, right? Coming
Mhm.
into it, they never teach you, and so I'm sure you've had a similar experience in doing your schooling. They deal with the technical aspects of what you want to do.
Mm.
You want to be a lawyer, they tell you about the different types of law. You need to know where to find the stuff. But there's a course that does a bit of things called LOMAT, law, office management, accounting, and something else, technology, right? But they really gloss over a lot of it. When I think going into practice, it needs to be a lot more in depth. Even us as lawyers, right? When you come out into practice, you're really between the devil and the deep blue sea. If you have a good senior, right, a good mentor in the profession, you can do things, but sometimes you learn hard lessons because they only focus on the technical aspect of business. A lot
Yep.
of professions, and the only one that will teach you that is if you're going to be an accountant, right? Because that's baked into what you do.
Yep.
They
Absolutely.
does. I think that it it is incumbent on, well, you can do it through your advisory work, ensuring so when people come to set up a company, right, or a business, I advise them on the different aspects that I'm aware of, but you can only speak to one person at a time doing that. There does need to be a lot more coordinated effort to do it, and I think it either has to fall on some agency or arm of the government, or the the chambers of commerce need to see the need to do that type of thing. Right now, there is an unfortunate level of ignorance of basic concept. I could tell you, I did a video on TikTok recently. I did a video on shares and the importance of issuing shares. Somebody had asked about, how do you buy shares? How do you sell shares? I did a video on how on buying and selling shares in Guyana, and people were asking me, how can I do this? Asking me for advice. I had to tell people, I'm not, I can't give advice on that type of thing. I would urge you to get in touch with a brokerage, and we have four here. But, you can never really tell until you speak about things how little people know about it.
Yeah. The only thing is, are you advocating that it becomes a compulsory subject at law school? I know the two law schools recently, they're doing a market assessment, spoke with me to inquire about what you would change in terms of young lawyers coming into the market and, some areas. Do you think that company law or some form of commercial law education should be mandatory at law school? And the other thing I wanted to ask is, when you speak to these clients and you explain it, is the client going to pay you for it? Because if you keep doing that, you spend a lot of your a lot of your time in the day, what it is that you do sell your hours, doing what? Is that pro bono? Because the client is going to say, well, I'm not paying you to teach me. If you,
So here's why I leave it. I leave it as part of the incorporation.
oh,
I would meet and I would say, if you're interested in doing a company, this is what it's going to be. This is what it's going to cost. This is what you will get out of it. So I bake it into to the service, right? Same thing with doing. I mean, I don't really charge to do. People come for advice on business registrations from time to time. Those people I'll just tell, obviously, because the
yeah,
unlimited structure is significantly simpler to explain.
yeah.
But in relation to what you asked about the law schools, I do think that some people come out and start their own shingle. Some people come out and work with the government, or they'll work in private practice. But at some point, everyone is going to decide, for whatever reason, I would like to do something on my own. And it's when you get to that point, if you're working as an employee, maybe 5 years, and you decide you're going to go strike out on your own, you have enough experience, is when you're going to feel the growing pains of not knowing. So I do think that we need to focus more on at least some fundamental business training to go into being a lawyer, not just the technical aspects of it, because you're going to benefit from it when people come to you for advice or consultation.
No, I agree. But some people would probably push back and say, well, I don't want to be, I am not planning to become involved in commerce or corporate work. And, but clearly there needs to be, I think the chambers of commerce and the business associations probably need to undertake that with some degree of seriousness.
I think it should be a remedial thing done maybe a few times a year, having this kind of introductory session, right? Where people can leave and say, well, I know what the business structures are and what it takes, right? Because no one explains to you after incorporation what happens generally. A lot of people don't know, as you mentioned, about getting the accountant. They don't know about issuing the shares. They don't know about the tools that are available to them in terms of debt and equity. And you mentioned about the case of the two mechanics, right? Would you call that a shareholder agreement or a founder's agreement? It's called different things in different parts of the world.
Right. Well, getting into the definition, I think we might run into problems because shareholders and founders, depending on which part of the world, may mean different things. But essentially what we want to get over is before you go and incorporate this business, you need to have an agreement on exactly what it is you are going to do when you set up the business and what are the provisions when you have conflict. You don't want conflict, but in theory, it will come at some time. And therefore, conflict resolution, which is something we tend not to want to plan for, is an essential part of setting up the bylaws of the company. What happens? Mm-hmm. If we have 50-50 shareholdings and we have a violent disagreement about the next step in our business development, how does that get resolved?
It is staggering. The fact that the people who are going to be working together are afraid or don't want to talk about these things. They're only willing to face it in a reactive manner. So, when they get into some dispute, then it spirals out of control. I mean, the first years of growing pains are going to be about misunderstandings, taking on new staff, deciding, like you mentioned, with company loans from the people to the company, because that's one thing that most people don't think about. The fact that you, as a person, and this gets really down to separate legal identity, that if you give money to the company owes you that money back.
Yep.
They don't necessarily make provision in any way. And definitely for tax reasons, you would need to have some sort of written agreement showing that you gave this money to the company, how you were to recoup it. And,
after you.
Oh yeah, so that's one thing. Do you think?
Let's take the opportunity to give a real example. So you put in $4 million. The company needed a debt or it wanted to import a piece of equipment, and you say, okay, I can take it out. There's no clear arrangement as to when you're going to take it out. But you reach a state where you need the $4 million urgently. And the company has it sitting down there. And you say, oh, come, give me back my money. The CEO or whoever's managing it says, no, this is for some other project. And then you get into the situation, well, when you put that money in, what was the time frame? What was the intention? Was it going to be on call? Or was it, well, we will amortize that $4 million over the next year and you get $1 million every quarter or something like that. And those simple things are important and can lead to disputes because, the shareholder, the 50% shareholder who's put in this $4 million to keep the company together at a crisis point. If he can't get it back when he wants it, and there was no discussion about how that was going to be repaid, the relationship starts to get a little frayed. And in Ghana, where our tolerance levels are very low and we're driven by dramatic behavior, oh, you think so, and then maybe party breaks up.
Well, you raise an important point because this is a big issue not only for companies in their first year, right, but later down. Access to finance and bankability of projects. Now, this is where corporate governance comes in, right? Because when you're looking at the viability of a project, it's not just about the numbers. It's about the systems that companies have in place. It's just a one-man board. Do you use the company as an ATM? Do you have an audit function or a committee on the board that looks at the transactions of the company and at least has one or two independent board members who can give independent advice?
You know,